Hello, Facebook fans and YouTube fans of DX Engineering. It's Thursday afternoon here in the Eastern Time Zone of the USA. It's 1830 Zulu on September 23rd, 2021. It's time for DX Engineering's Manufacturers Showcase. This is a show where we bring on one of our many manufacturers. In fact, we have over 160 different manufacturers that DX Engineering represents. And today we have with us Mark, W9WMR. Mark is the owner of West Mountain Radio. Hello, Mark.
Hi there.
And so we're going to talk about things all West Mountain today. And if you have any questions or comments or compliments for Mark, just put them in the chat, and we'll talk about those after your presentation. So, Mark, go ahead and take it away.
All right. I'm going to do a screen share here and just run through a quick presentation of the overview of all of our products. Can you guys see that okay?
It's not up yet. Sometimes it takes it a few seconds to come up. You clicked on share, then you highlighted your screen and then hit the share button, right? So it's a three-step process.
It says I'm sharing.
Yeah, there we go. Now we got it. You're all set to go.
Okay, good. All right. Let's jump into this real quick here. We'll start with the RIGblaster product line. These are our more advanced products that we've got. The RIGblasters are essentially an interface between your computer and your radio. Most people are using it for digital mode communication. The most popular product in this line is the Advantage, up there in the upper right corner. The Advantage has a sound card built into it. So what happens is when you connect the USB cable to your computer, a new sound card and a new COM port appear. The COM port is used for rig control. And you have good controls on the front of the Advantage for levels. And you connect your microphone through the radio right into the Advantage. So you can use voice mode as you want. And then whenever the Advantage needs to take over for digital mode, it has access to your push to talk and your microphone for the radio. A lower cost option is right below the Advantage there. That's the plug and play unit. That takes advantage of the auxiliary connector on the back of a lot of radios. The sound card is in the computer. So this is a very low cost option if you're just trying to get started in the digital mode. All of these RIGblasters come with a DVD that has over 100 sound card programs, so you're kind of ready to go. The upper left corner there, the DX Pro, is our newest unit. It actually has 2 sound cards built into it, so it can actually be processing data from 2 data streams at the same time for radios that have both 2 channels in it, or for just if you want to have 2 radios connected up to it. The RIGblaster Blue, I've got a picture in the next slide I'm going to show you with that one. Let me jump to the no mic real quick before I move to the next slide. The no mic is for a radio that's dedicated to digital mode. There's no option there for connecting your microphone. If you want to use voice mode, you have to disconnect it and then connect up your microphone to the radio. This is used for things like Echolink, a station that's basically going to be dedicated to digital mode. For the RIGblaster Blue, instead of a USB connection to the computer, it uses a Bluetooth interface to the computer. Or you can use a Bluetooth interface to a headset. So you can be, walking around your basement cleaning up while you're talking on the radio using the headset. It also has the capability of going to a tablet where you could have digital mode software running on the tablet. All of this through a Bluetooth connection. The connections between the RIGblaster Blue and the radio are the same as they are for the Advantage. Getting into DC power, our power distribution line, we've got a lot of RIGrunners. Basically, they're power strips for DC. There's a large variety. They're one of the more popular units is the top center one there, the 4005i. It's got 5 output ports. Each port on here can handle up to 40 amps, but you can't use more than 40 amps total because that input connector is a 45 amp power pole on it. It was pretty much standardized on power poles for all of our DC electronics. They're really kind of miraculous. We'll talk a little bit more about those farther in. We have 2 models. The 4005 that's shown there is our standard model where the connectors come out the front of the unit. That works well if this is mounted like on the floor under a table or something like that. And then there's a horizontal model there to the right, and that shows the connectors coming off the bottom. If you're going to mount this on a wall, that might work as well. On the horizontal models, we also supply with the RIGrunners little locks that you can put in there to prevent the cables from falling out if that's going to be an issue for you. Some of our RIGrunners have USB ports on there, like the upper left corner. We've got 2 charging ports. Each port is good for 2.2 amps for charging, like tablets and stuff like that. Some of our models, that 4007 there, have an on-off switch, and that model also has a voltage and a current readout on it. A couple of the models have a very advanced feature in it where if the voltage goes too high or too low, it actually cuts the voltage off to the ports. Some of the other models, like that 4008 that's shown there, it's just got a LED indicator. Green means the voltage is in range, red means it's got too high, yellow means it's too low. We do have one model that go up to 80 amps. It's not 80 amps out of each connector, but you can get 40 amps on one half of the unit, 40 amps on the other half of the unit. Again, we're restricted by the 45 amp limit of the power pole connector, but many radios that require that kind of current will have 2 connectors coming out of them, 2 power cables. And so you can split it and put one on one side, put one on the other side, and get up to 80 amps out of that unit. It looks like I've covered most of the features that we have on the RIGrunners. There's a lot of different models here, and we have people that are always asking for new things. All of these RIGrunners, the fuses have lights under them. If the fuse blows, the LED goes on. And we've also got capacitors in there to reduce the noise from one radio to another. We've also got versions of the RIGrunner that work at other voltages, 24 volts, 48 volts. Not as common in the amateur radio world, but we're also selling these commercially. This is a very special RIGrunner. This is the 4005i. It's a power distribution block like the other ones, except this one can be controlled over the internet. We have either a Wi-Fi interface or an Ethernet interface where you connect it up to the internet, and then from any web browser in the world, you can control the ports, turn a port on, turn a port off, read how much current is going through the port. They're all electronic fuses in this case, and you can change from the web browser what the fuse value is, like a 10 amp fuse, for example. And if it blows, you can change it to a 15 amp fuse right from your web browser. So that's a really advanced unit. The one on the bottom there is a 10 port version, and that's a rack mount. We can't use power poles for that, so there's a terminal block kind of an interface for ring terminals to get the power in. It can handle up to 100 amps total, and then up to 40 amps through each of the output ports. Works the same way where you can interface this over the internet. This is a great option for like a repeater site that you're not at commonly. This just gives you an idea of what you see at your web browser screen as far as controlling the remote 4005i or 110i. Some more of the DC power products. Upper left there, Power Check Plus. It's basically just a current meter, voltmeter, but it's got an internal log in it. You can keep months worth of data as far as the current flow goes. It measures the current flow in both directions. So for example, you could put that on a battery and measure how much current you're draining out of the battery. You can actually program into this what the battery size is supposed to be, and it'll tell you how much amp hours are probably left in the battery. Likewise, when you charge that battery through this thing, it'll increase that number. So it'll actually kind of keep a running gas gauge of what's going on the battery. But this can be used for a lot of things. It's good for up to 40 amps, up to 60 volts. Really nice interface. You're seeing one screen there. There's a lot of different screens that you can have if you want to highlight voltage or current. There's alarms you can set on it. If it goes over voltage, over current, the screen goes red. It's really a nice little unit. It's also got a USB port on it, so you can download the data to a PC, or you can just monitor the data live from the PC real time. I'm going to talk about the PowerGuard Plus here. That was the next item in that slide. The PowerGuard Plus is essentially an electronic switch. It's a solid-state switch that can switch up to 40 amps. And that can be used to make sure that the power going to your radio is safe. It goes under voltage or over voltage, it turns the switch off, and it saves your equipment from any kind of trouble. It also has the ability to connect in a low current switch of your own. For example, a key switch that you could just turn your station on, turn your station off. You could have something that detects water in your basement, turn it off if water is detected. So this is just a really nice electronic switch that can be used for your station. The IsoPower Plus there, what that does is that's for use in a vehicle where you have an auxiliary battery for your radio equipment. When you're running the vehicle, the IsoPower connects your auxiliary battery to the vehicle so that it can charge. When the vehicle is off, the radio is connected directly to the battery, and you're completely isolated from the vehicle. So this way, you're not going to ever run down your vehicle battery using your radio equipment. On the bottom of the screen there is our PowerGate family. The Epic PowerGate is the most popular. There's two models with the connectors coming out the bottom and the connectors coming out the front. That's the only difference between the Epic and the Epic H. A lot of customers ask us, well, is the Epic H better, or what features are here versus there? The only difference is where those connectors come out. The PG40S is our older model PowerGate. There's a higher voltage drop on that. That's why it's got a giant heat sink, and it doesn't have as many features as the newer model. I'm going to go through the Epic in more detail here. Basically what happens is, if you've got a power supply that's active, the radio power is running off of the power supply, and it's using a charger to charge the battery. It's a smart charger, and it can charge lead acid batteries or lithium batteries. If you lose AC, your battery starts running, your radio starts running off of the battery. There's not even a blip in the radio, it just keeps going. If you have AC and you connect up an optional solar panel, the battery will be charged from the solar panel and the radio runs off of the AC power until you lose AC, in which case the radio runs off of the battery. So this is a really sophisticated unit. The voltage drops are 0.05 volts between the power source and the radio. Compare that to about 1/3 of a volt that you get on our older model PowerGate. So this is a really nice unit. It's been very popular for us. This also has a USB port on it, where it monitors a lot of the data the data that it's collecting as far as the battery voltage, the power supply voltage, how much current it's charging the battery at, what mode it's in, what kind of batteries it's set up for. So you can monitor all of that over the USB port if you need to look into trouble. This is one of our newer products. It's basically a battery booster. You can run all the way down to, say, 10.5 volts from your battery and still output up to 15 volts to your radio. You can adjust how much voltage you want to output on it. This allows you to make full use out of the battery. A lot of times your transmitter will stop working at about 11.7 volts on the radios. But the batteries are all rated down to about 10.5 volts. So you basically stop using the battery while it's still got at least 1/3 of its energy still left in it. So the battery booster allows you to make full use out of that battery. Target tuner. This is for use with a screw antenna. What it does is it's got an SWR meter that it connects in there, electronic SWR meter, and it'll adjust the antenna so that it's in the right spot for the lowest SWR. If you find a spot you like, you can click the save button, and it'll remember that frequency and that position on the antenna. So later, if you tune to that frequency, it'll actually move the antenna right away to the correct spot. You don't even need to transmit if you've got a cat cable going to your radio. because what we'll do is we'll read the frequency that the radio is on over the cat cable and move the antenna to one of your memorized positions. This is a really nice unit if you've got a screw antenna. Audio products. The clear speaker, super popular for a very long time from West Mountain Radio. There's a DSP built in, designed specifically for amateur radio type use. There's a control there that determines how much filtering we put in. It's got a 10 watts amplifier in there, so this is really good for getting over road noise. There's a lot of punch coming out of that speaker. Clear DSP next to it there. Same unit, except it doesn't have the speaker, so you use your own external speaker with that. Both of these, I should point out, have headphone jacks on the front. We also added on the Clear DSP a tone control. Some people have been complaining to us that their hearing works better in certain ranges than other ranges. So the tone control will put more power into one particular range of tone. The Clear Stereo, very similar to the Clear DSP, except there are 2 channels. So again, for the contesters who are listening to 2 stations at the same time, you can use the Clear Stereo and still get the filtering separately on both ears. Those switches in the center there control what you hear in each ear. If they're both down like they show now, you're hearing both the right channel on both ears. If they're both up, you hear both the left channels. If it's one or the other, and you're hearing one channel in each ear. CBA, Computer Battery Analyzer product line. The CBA 4 has been selling for a lot of years now. We just upgraded that to the CBA 5. A handful of feature improvements. We've got the fuse on the outside of the case now that at least alerts people that there is a fuse. We had a lot of tech support calls where people say, hey, it stopped working. And you have to say, well, take off the red cover and replace the fuse. But the fuse on the outside helps a lot. We've also got a remote voltage sense on here, so you don't your voltage reading is accurate for what's at the battery versus what's at the CBA. When you're drawing a lot of current, there's a little bit of voltage drop in the cable, and so the voltage wasn't quite as accurate. So this is a big improvement to our CBA product line. We've also added a 100-volt version. Visually, the difference is we've got some little side panels on there so that you can't accidentally touch the metal plate, which is a higher voltage. The heatsink on the CBAs is the same potential as the plus on the battery, so that's why there's a little bit of concern there. The HR version, that's for like coin cell batteries, for very smaller batteries. It's got a higher resolution, higher accuracy, but made for the smaller batteries. Basically, what the CBA does is it discharges your battery. It's an electronic load, and it can be used in a lot of configurations. The most popular configuration is using it as a battery tester. You can use it to test power supplies, test solar panels, or just use it to draw a lot of current. We use it to test our RIGrunners. We'll set it up for 40 amps and run it continuously overnight and see what heats up on the board and whether there's any kind of problems. So the CBA is a really nice electronic load. Let me see if I got some charts here. This red line here shows a battery discharge chart that came out of the CBA. It shows the lead acid battery, how it discharges. This one, what we did was we told it 30 seconds for 2 amps, 30 seconds, 20 amps, and alternate back and forth to kind of simulate a receive transmit kind of a cycle. And this shows you what the discharge looks like for that kind of a situation. This is showing a solar panel. What we do is we sweep the solar panel. Start at 0 amps, go to 0.1 amps, 0.2 amps, all the way up. And it shows you how many watts you can get out of the solar panel. So you see solar panels have a sweet spot. This one, like something up around 4 amps, is where you're getting the most watts out of the solar panel. I just noticed on this chart that they put in here, there's actually 2 curves. If you look very carefully in the lower left corner, there's another little curve. The big one had the solar panel pointing at the sun, and then the smaller one, we had it pointing to the north sky where there was no sun, just to show you the difference, how much energy you get out of the solar panel, depending on where it's pointed. But these are a lot of fun to work with and figure out how different things are operating. All the batteries around your house you're able to test with this CBA unit. This is showing a lithium battery. If you remember the previous discharge chart, you had a pretty steep slope as the lead acid battery discharged. The lithium batteries discharge at a much slower rate. So you see you can get a lot more energy out of the battery before it starts to drop off. This was the receive transmit as well on here. But that previous chart, as that previous chart showed you, you can actually plot these things on top of one another. CBA software is really pretty sophisticated as far as putting all sorts of graphs on one another. The units you saw earlier had a 150 watt limit for what we can discharge. If you need to go larger, that one amplifier system in the upper left there, that's good for 500 watts. We've got 1,000 watt systems. We've got 2,000 watt systems. We've done systems up to 8,000 watts. So basically these CBAs are just connected in parallel to draw even more current. Talk a little bit about our crimp tool. As I said earlier, we're standardizing on Anderson power pole connectors for everything. They have extremely low resistance. Let me see. I think the next slide shows you that. 0.000525 ohms, and that's for both of the connectors together. At 40 amps, less than 1 watt of energy is being lost in the connector. Comparing that to some of the other connectors you've seen, the upper right there is the kind of concentric power supply jack you see on a lot of consumer electronics. You're going to lose 48 watts of energy running 40 amps through that. The HF radio, much better. What they've done is they've tripled up on each of the conductors. So they've actually gotten that down to 0.003 ohms. But you're still losing 5 watts of energy. The 5 watts is probably not enough to melt that plastic at 40 amps. They're typically only using that up to 20 amps anyway. The banana jacks, 16 watts of loss through a connector like that. 0.01 ohms is that. This is why we like the power poles. I should point out that the power pole connectors, there's 3 styles, depending on the contacts that are inside the plastic: 15 amp, 30 amp, 45 amp. They're totally interchangeable. You can have a 15 amp connector plugged into a 45 amp connector, no problem. It's just how much metal is in there and how much current that it can handle. There's also a difference in the wire gauges that'll connect up to the contacts. But these are very easy to use, very easy to crimp. You can make the cable length anything you need in your station to really clean up the station wiring. There's no male, female on the power pole connectors. Any connector plugs into any other connector. It's impossible to connect them backwards. You can't connect the black into the red. So it's very easy to use and really nice to clean things up. You want to take some equipment out into the field. It's easy to disconnect this stuff, reconnect it up. And as I pointed out earlier, you can get locks for those power poles as well to lock the connectors together. Here's a slide that says everything I just said. Yeah, I forgot that there's a slide here next to it. They are really easy to assemble. We've got several videos on our website. We've got PDFs that talk about assembling it. Plus, you can always call us and we can walk you through it if you have any trouble. Give you an idea of loss. We were talking about resistance a little bit earlier. This is showing you the different size cables and how much loss you get out of those cables. 10 gauge cable, 50-foot wire, and here it says at 20 amps. 4% loss. You go up to an 18 gauge cable, you're losing almost a third of your energy in the cable. And then we talked there about the power pole contacts that you would probably want to use for that kind of a situation. We have a calculator on our website that basically shows what I just showed you. Go to support, calculators, find cable size, put in how many feet of cable you're going to run, and we'll tell you what your power loss is going to be, in terms of percentage and volts across that run. That'll help you pick the right size cable. That is the presentation. Do we have any questions?
Well, that was really good, Mark. I mean, in the product line, as I mentioned to you earlier, we carry 51 of your products, and I don't think we have them all. But boy, there's just so many interesting things that you guys make. Let's see what we have in the chat room here. Let's see. Rob, Mike 0 Kilo Papa Delta, he said, I used the West Mountain radio auto tuner on my Scorpion antenna. It worked very well. Rob has one of the best mobile signals I've ever heard. He's very consistently strong here in the U.S. on 40 meters at night, and so that's working good. We've got Ham on from Australia, VK4FABQ, and Mark N4BCD says today's modern rigs present a confusing array of ways to do digital modes. He built his own AFSK RIDI interface, but RIGblaster plug and play makes all the modes easy. And that is a great point, Mark. And Bob the Traveler said, I did not realize that West Mountain made such a wide variety of equipment. And it is incredible. WB3 LHD, nice stuff. And let's see here. Dino says, power pole strips really clean up the shack for the 12-volt DC accessory wiring at the radio and at the workbenches. And N5PJ said a lot of cool stuff. Anybody has any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll get them to Mark here. And of course, we do answer questions about West Mountain equipment at DX Engineering. And then, of course, if we don't have the answer, you can go always direct to Mark and his support staff. And Elsie, we probably don't have time today to hear an audio demo, but you have a lot of YouTube videos and things on your website, Mark, right?
Yeah. Would you like to hear the clear DSP? I've got one behind me.
Oh yeah, if you've got it right there, go ahead.
Sure. Let me try this one for you. I'm going to start out with listening to what you might hear over the air, and then I'm going to turn the DSP filtering up. You can hear I just took that hash right out.
Yep.
I'm going to run this down one more time.
I need to ring that out a little bit further. Made a couple of contacts with it after I first got it tuned up, and it seemed like it was working fine. But
so you can see what kind of difference that makes. It really is good with the hash. It's good with the buzzes. Any kind of repetitive noise, it's just excellent at taking out.
And like I said, you do have more of these demos on videos on your website.
Yeah, and we're starting to do more shows and stuff now too. So we show this stuff off at the shows. And if any of your listeners do have any before-after pictures of stations, like with the RIGrunners and the power poles and stuff, we'd be glad to try and collect those and use that in more of our advertising.
And there's a question here. What are the major differences in power poles from like the inexpensive ones that Amazon sells compared to what you have? I mean, talk about what happens when you have the lesser expensive ones.
They melt. That's the bottom line. Really, you want to go with the Anderson ones. And the same is true of the RIGrunners. You'll see some of those cheaper RIGrunners out there. As I said earlier, we run the 40 amps through ours continuously to make sure it can handle it. A lot of the other equipment out there, it will handle it intermittently, but it's over time that heat starts to build up, things start to get soft. But that's the problem you run into with the connectors. We've seen some of those Chinese connectors where the retention clips don't fit in. The plastic doesn't quite fit together, especially if you're trying to connect it to other equipment. So really, it's worth paying the little bit of extra money to get the actual Anderson connectors.
And Aaron says, can I order cables from DX Engineering with power poles already installed? Yes, we do have them. Dawn, Whiskey Juliet 3 United says, hi, Tim and Mark. I have the clear DSP and really cleaned up the audio on my FT450. And Whiskey Alpha 9 Echo says, any new solar controllers for larger arrays?
No, we do have people that keep asking us about that, about doing larger ones. You can actually connect the power gates in parallel. So if you wanted to do like an 80 amp system, you can do that. And And we've been talking about doing something larger. The big thing that's been holding us back is those 45 amp connectors on the power poles. We've been hesitant to get into larger connectors for larger current. Quite not sure if it's, we've got zillions of power pole cables. I hate to get into a situation where we now have to double that just to go to, 120 amp cables or something like that. But we're always listening to your comments, and any suggestions, send us emails and stuff, and we just add it to kind of our tick list. And we say, well, enough people have already asked about it. We're going to have to try and do this. Yeah.
So Mike is wondering if West Mountain will be at Hamcation in Orlando.
It is our current plan, yeah. We've always tried to do that show when they have it. It's an expensive show for us to go to, and it hasn't been as good as some of the other shows, but yeah, we tried to go there.
Good. Jeff, Whiskey Delta 8, Juliet Mike says lots of cool things from West Mountain Radio for sure. And VA2 Charlie Sierra Tango, and appreciated the answer to the questions about the power poles. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming in today and showing us all the stuff going on at West Mountain. And we are very proud here at DX Engineering to represent your company, and proud to have a lot of this material on the shelf. So if somebody wants it, it's going to ship tonight.
All right, very good.
That's the great thing.
And if any of your listeners are in Illinois, we're going to be at a Belvedere show this weekend as well.
Great. Okay, Mark, take care, and we'll see you next time. And
thanks
to all of you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow afternoon. It's Joe Rudy, MK7U, at 20 Zulu. That's 4 p.m. Eastern Time. 73 from DX Engineering.